Joining me now here on set is Professor of Political Science at the University of North Texas at Dallas. He specializes in Latin America. It is Orlando Perez. Thanks for being with us, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
What do you think happened here between President Trump and Maria Corina Machado?
Well, I think, as you said, and as the New York Times reported, the intelligence reports were that absent a major military incursion, much larger than what happened to capture Maduro, and a stabilization force that would have required maybe 50,000, 60,000, upwards of that troops, there was no way of guaranteeing security and guaranteeing the stability of Venezuela if we were to do a regime change immediately and install
wholesale regime change would have required a much more robust and time-consuming American presence in Venezuela.
Right.
Not necessarily the rumors out there that President Trump was upset that Maria Corina Machado had received the Nobel Peace Prize. Rick Grenell, by the way, has said repeatedly to the New York Times, he said that they pressed Mrs. Machado to outline her plan for putting her surrogate candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, into office after she was barred from running, and he grew frustrated when she expressed no concrete ideas on how to put the democratic elected government into power, according to people briefed on the conversation. So if the plan instead is to leave remnants, perhaps more amenable remnants of the existing regime in place, what does that look like over time? What are reasonable goals in Venezuela?
Well, I think what we have to have are clear benchmarks and timetables for the current regime. We have made a calculation, the United States has made a calculation that working with Delcy Rodriguez, one element of the current regime, the vice president to Maduro, was the safest way of transitioning the country away from the type of narco-terrorist regime that the president had talked about before, and that was one of the rationales for going into Venezuela in the first place. And so you need to have clear benchmarks, clear timetable. I think you need to start with the release of political prisoners. I think you need to also make sure that the government is ending their relationship with narco-trafficking cartels. And there's got to be deliverables that we ask of the regime.
How realistic and what timeline, quickly, is the deliverable of distancing yourself from China, distancing yourself from Iran, distancing yourself from Russia, and getting the oil back online, which people say may take years?
Right. So that's a great question, and I think it's a very difficult question to answer in terms of a timetable. There are elements within the current government of Venezuela who are clearly tied, who owe their allegiance because they owe their income and they owe their power to the Cubans, to the Russians, to the Chinese. Most of the military equipment that Venezuela has, that the military in Venezuela has, is Russian. And so to wean them away from those sources of influence is going to be very, very difficult. And it may take years. It may literally take years. We need to set clear timetables, clear benchmarks, and then hold them accountable. Ultimately, I think the goal should be to have free, fair, competitive elections that where the count is transparent, unlike what happened in 2024, and allow the opposition to run the candidate that they want. In this case, it may be Maria Corina Machado, it may be somebody else, and then whoever wins in a transparent, free election gets to govern the country. That should be the ultimate goal. weaning them away from the bad actors around the world is going to be very difficult, and it may not happen unless we get that regime change through elections.
All right, Professor Orlando Perez, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.